Winless no more. New Orleans Saints get a victory over the New York Giants, 26-14. The final in the Dome yesterday. Saints force 5 turnovers from Jackson Dart, Cam Scatterbo, and the Giants, and moved to 1-4 on the season. Ross Jackson covers the Who Dats, LockedOn Saints, of course, LouisianaSports.net as well. Give us a little bit of time here on this Monday. Ross, how are you?
Hey, man, doing great. Thanks for having me.
It is our pleasure. What was your biggest takeaway? I'll get big picture to start. Biggest takeaway from Sunday in the Dome?
Yeah, I think my biggest takeaway were the takeaways.
Okay.
5 consecutive takeaways for that New Orleans Saints defense. It's the first time the Saints have done something like that since 1991. Remember, that was a vaunted defense at that time, and they actually did it twice in that season. But to me, that was the big thing. I think you saw good things on the offensive side here and there, a little bit maybe more sporadic. But the way that New Orleans Saints defense responded after surrendering 2 back-to-back touchdowns on Giants opening possessions and then shutting out that team the rest of the way through, including those 5 takeaways, and all of those, or a lot of those plays, having some contribution from the young defensive pieces, I think that was kind of my biggest thing that I walked away with from this game.
Let's talk about a couple of those. Jonas Sanker, tackle for loss, 7 stops on the day, and of course was involved in takeaway. What can you tell us about what he has been for the last month for the Saints team?
He's just such an impactful player, and like, this is the guy that the Saints were super excited was still on the board when they selected him in this year's draft. They were really excited to get him involved in the defense as well once the opportunity opened up there. Obviously, it happened in a less than advantageous way with having lost Julian Blackmon in the process, but the way that he has just stepped in now, contributing to 2 takeaways in 2 games at this point, or in the last 2 games at this point. He's just been somebody that always finds his way around the ball, communicates incredibly well, which is absolutely necessary in this Brandon Staley defense. You can see how, the safety rotations and the way that these young rookies, move and fill the areas where each other vacate and all those things. Like, it is just a really, really impressive thing to watch how quickly he's caught on to this defense and this scheme as a rookie.
Kool-Aid McKinstry gets a couple of picks, his first 2 as a pro. Was also victimized on the second touchdown the Giants scored. And at that point, you're kind of thinking, this is what we've seen for a few weeks. What kind of improvements did you see as the game went on from him, and how big a day was Sunday for Kool-Aid?
Yeah, he didn't have the strongest day to start, but I mean, I had spoken to some people earlier on in the week that were really impressed with sort of his week of preparation and being able to get out there and kind of show that as the game went on. I thought really stood out. He had the 2 interceptions, but then he also had the pass breakup against Theo Johnson in the end zone on the left sideline when they tried to run that fade route with the big body tight end there toward the end of the game. He also had a lead block or really a block that kept Darius Slayton at bay as Jordan Howden was returning that that fumble recovery for a touchdown. He just had a really, really strong game. And if you're the New Orleans Saints, what you're hoping is that this is kind of the opening of the floodgates, if you will. I remember years ago watching a young Derek Stingley Jr. with LSU, and it had gotten into maybe 4 or 5 games of the season. I think that they were going up against Vanderbilt. He got his first interception, if I remember correctly. And then after that, the floodgates just kind of opened for him, and then he had this incredible season after that. Saints are certainly hoping to see a similar situation happen with another player here in the state of Louisiana.
Let's move to the offensive side. Finally, the big play shows up for New Orleans, and it was at a great time for Spencer Rattler and Rashid Shaheed. What kind of development was that, and is it something that they maybe can build on?
Yeah, it's big. I think the thing that you saw after that play was how the Giants had to respond, knowing that play was in their, in the Saints' coffers at that point. That they had to be honest around the deep ball, and it caused 2 pass interference penalties later on that they got of 19 and 16 yards on back-to-back plays. That's the reason why you want these big explosive plays. It's not just because, it'll get you into the end zone every now and then. And certainly we know that explosive plays lead to points. You go back to 2020 through 2023, 51% of drives that had an explosive play ended in a score. 2 explosive plays was over 80%, and it takes you from 2.3% to 28% when it comes to scoring a touchdown. I mean, having explosive plays in your offense certainly helps you out. And so I think that, those are some of the ripple effects that come from that. It was the only pass that the Saints threw that ended up, counting as an offensive play that went for over 20 yards in terms of air yards. there. So the Saints still being maybe a little bit too selective about when they take their shots. They could still stand to get a little bit more aggressive there. But I think getting that first one in the book certainly helps to kind of settle everybody in and build some confidence around the deep ball. And maybe we'll see more of that as the season rolls along.
What did you see from the Saints offense in the red zone?
Not a lot. That's a big place where they've got to find a way to continue to, I don't know, finite or really kind of figure out the sort of finite details of how and what they want to do as an identity in the red zone. 0-3 in this game when it came to touchdowns in the red zone, and when you've got a kicker that's missing short field goals and things like that, that's not an ideal situation to put yourself in, because you really run the risk of not only walking away without a touchdown in the red zone, you have to be honest about the risk of walking away without a score in the red zone when you're in striking distance at this point. And so the Saints really need to get their kind of red zone identity figured out. As Taysom Hill gets more and more embedded in this Saints offense and in Kellen Moore's offense, I imagine he'll get back to being a big part of what the Saints love to do in the red zone. He was a 10% differential on the field versus off the field for New Orleans last year in the red zone. And so I think that'll be an opportunity for them as they get him a little bit more comfortable in the system.
You mentioned the field goals. What do we make of Blake Grupe through the 5 games?
Yeah, I mean, look, it's concerning, right? I mean, he's one of the guys that's got, I think it's one of the lowest field goal percentages so far this season. And I think if you go back over the last few years, it's one of the lowest field goal percentages cumulative over the time that he's been in the NFL. And so, you're in the Sean Payton days, that wouldn't have gotten you anywhere here in New Orleans for very long. He was quick to move on from kickers, as we saw. But, the Saints are going to continue to be patient here with him. But they have a young guy that could be really interesting in Charlie Smith as they start to figure out exactly where they want to go with him and what it is that he's going to be able to do. And so we'll see. The Saints have been doing a good job getting a look at a lot of young players. You start to wonder whether or not they'll eventually start to get a look at a different field goal kicker here, or if Blake Grupe just simply gets to a point where he hits that rhythm that he had in training camp, because he was outstanding in training camp. But for whatever reason, that hasn't translated here to the regular season.
Last one, Ross. I know you got to get to a press conference here. You're with this team just about every day. What does a win do for that locker room, for Kellen Moore, for Spencer Rattler, and just for morale moving forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think that there's just a lot of positivity around this team, win or loss. I think that's just kind of what Kellen Moore brings. But you can certainly feel the weight off the shoulder, the levity that comes with getting that first win of the season, and it coming against an opponent that they should have beat. I mean, if we're being honest, like, they were the better team on the football field on paper. And so being able to go out there and have a confident stand, knowing that you should go in and win that game and getting that done, I think that just kind of boosts the confidence. The big thing for them now is to see if they can turn it into a streak, see if they can get a second in a row. This still isn't a playoff team or a Super Bowl team or anything like that by any stretch of the imagination. But what you're looking for from this team is continued progress. And I think the Saints are really feeling that. And you can certainly feel the kind of joy associated with that when you're in the locker room about it.
Locked On Saints every day, LouisianaSports.net every day. Looking for your black and cold coverage. Ross Jackson has got you covered. Appreciate it, man.
Thank you, bud. You take care. Stay safe. Appreciate you having me on.
Sure will. That is Ross Jackson from Locked On Saints and LouisianaSports.net. He was in the Dome yesterday. Looked like a festive environment there in the Dome, and that's a good thing. As Ross just mentioned at the end there, doesn't mean that the Saints are knocking on the playoffs doors, but it just is nice to get one in the win column against a team that came in not very good. Now, they had a nice win last week, but they're not a very good football team. Now 1-4, have not won away from their home football stadium. The Saints finally get on the board with a victory. They are now 1-4, 1-2 at home. Hey, it's on. Thanks for watching Hunt on Saints. Before you leave, help us out a little bit. Hit that like button, leave your comments in the section below, and hit that subscribe button so you get all our content right here from Hunt on Saints. We'll see you next time.